present The Money Secret by John Fry with Jeff Bainham and Annabelle Spinks-Jones.
He was the only US president ever to do that. Richard Lawrence tried to shoot Jackson with 2 pistols, but neither fired, and the president survived. Not guilty. On the grounds of insanity, Lawrence, on his release, boasted that people in Europe had promised to look after him if caught, and were in effect the true source of those that wanted Jackson dead. On his deathbed, when asked what his greatest achievement was, President Jackson said,
"I killed the bank."
The bankers were down, not out.
But Jackson killed them.
He defeated them at that time, but...
Times change?
And people forget, Chloe. Give anything a couple of generations, and the reason for the struggle are lost. It's the human tragedy, I'm afraid.
You haven't forgotten.
I have your future to consider. Now, 1861.
Should we be standing here by the door?
They haven't seen us.
Is that Abraham Lincoln? He's really tall, isn't he?
This is when the American Civil War was started. South Carolina leaves the Union, and the first conflict was at Fort Sumter.
This was about slavery, right?
The southern states were in a bad way. The North had used trade tariffs to stop the South from getting cheap goods from Europe, and Europe didn't help by stopping cotton imports from the South. Eventually, they even printed their own greybacks in an attempt to pay for the war. But these pieces of paper were finally printed into worthlessness. The result? The South had to pay more with less.
That no longer comes as a surprise.
As Otto von Bismarck, Chancellor of Germany, said,
If the United States stays united, they would become economically and financially independent. And that would upset the bankers' desire to dominate the world.
Lincoln approached the money changers about paying for the Civil War. The bankers wanted the states to be divided, and so offered the president loans at 24 to 36%.
And Lincoln said no.
Correct.
Then where did the money come from?
Good question.
And the answer?
In Washington, Lincoln called for Colonel Dick Taylor and gave him the problem of how to pay for the war. Taylor responded,
My dear Lincoln, nothing could be easier. Get Congress to pass a law to print and issue your own full legal treasury bills. Then use them to pay your army. Then go and win the war with them.
But, Taylor, will people accept them as money?
If you make them legally enforceable, what choice will they have?
The new bills were printed in green ink on the reverse side and so got the name greenbacks.
And were printed at no rate of interest to the government. In other words, free money.
You've got it.
The government shall control all the money required without borrowing from those whose interest is different from that of the people. Although the control of currency is not the only action of government, it is the way in which the government has its greatest opportunity to aid its people. Through this, the taxpayer will be spared huge repayments of interest. Money will serve the people and not the other way around.
Very deep.
Deep, yes. But now we start to get an example of the international extent of the money changers' views. Seeing where the forces to destroy the United States were coming from, Tsar Alexander II of Russia declared,
If either France or England involve themselves in the American Civil War by helping the South, then Russia will consider this an act of war. Send part of the Russian Pacific Fleet to San Francisco. I turned the bankers down when they wanted to establish a private central bank in Russia. And if they have America, we will be next.
In 1865, April the 14th, 41 days after Lincoln was sworn in for his second term, and only 5 days after General Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox, which brought the Civil War to its conclusion, the president attended the Ford Theatre. John Wilkes Booth, according to Secret Service agents, was a mercenary working for the international bankers.
Let me guess. They wanted to get rid of any money that they did not control, and in the process get rid of the greenbacks.
1866, and Congress passed the Contraction Act.
which took money out of circulation in an attempt to withdraw Lincoln's greenbacks, debt-free money. Let me see if I can work it out. Over the next few years, as the economy contracted, there were a number of recessions until the populace screamed that
Something must be done!
And, just for another guess, the bankers wanted another privately owned central bank.
Chloe, you are ahead of me.
I'm starting to understand what you've been telling me, Isaac. But this is all in the past, right?
Sadly not. Left turn, Chloe. 1910 awaits us at Jekyll Island.
The clothes are getting a bit more modern.
We're just off the coast of Georgia for a very secret meeting.
Who's that? Over there?
Conspirators. Men with guilt in their hearts and much to feel guilty about. That one. His name is Frank Vanderlip, currently president of the National City Bank. He will, in 1935, admit to the nature of the meeting taking place. Hush, here they come.
This meeting, gentlemen, must remain secret. We must not be discovered at any price. If we should be, our plans will not come to fruition. If we are exposed, our banking bill will have no chance of being passed by Congress.
Who are all these men?
Warburgs, the Schiffs, and the Rothschilds, all interconnected by marriage. One big happy family.
We've got other problems.
Paul Warburg.
There are now more than double the amount of banks in the country. They now hold 57% of all the deposits. That cannot continue.
John D. Rockefeller said.
Competition is sin.
And that guy?
Senator Nelson Aldrich.
We need to dominate the finance, not just of one part of the Union, but the whole country. This is the power that a central bank will give us.
The U.S. economy is now so strong that corporations no longer need to borrow from us. They're investing out of the profits they've made. That cannot be allowed to remain so.
What shall we call this new bank?
Don't even use the word bank in the title.
How about National Reserve? Or even better, the Federal Reserve. Everyone will think it's part of the government. Only we will know the truth.
We'll need the authority of Congress to set it up.
Call it the Aldrich Bill. Yeah, that's got a certain ring to it.
But in 1912, when...
The Aldrich Bill?
Yes. Thank you, Senator Aldrich.
The Aldrich Bill! The Aldrich Bill! The Aldrich Bill!
Was presented to Congress, all did not go as the bankers had hoped. Republican Charles A. Lindbergh addressed the session.
The Aldrich Bill will benefit no one but Wall Street. If we vote for this bill, there will be nothing but a succession of panics to intimidate the public and government.
Congress will not vote for this bill. What are we going to do?
Do what we always do. One side will not give us what we want. Bet the other side.
So, they started to heavily finance Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic presidential candidate. Publicly, Wilson said,
I'm against the Aldrich Bill.
Then, 13 months later, and once in office, the bankers changed the title, and Wilson declared,
The Federal Reserve System? What a damn good idea.
Calling it the Glass-Owen Bill, it was different only in so much that the title was different. The bill did not look like it was going to pass.
This bill is corrupt. This bill is deceitful.
But on the 22nd of December, 1913, the bill did pass.
The bill has passed.
Did President Wilson ever realize what he had done?
3 years later, he spoke about it.
Our government is now one of the most controlled across the face of this planet. No longer do the people hold the government to account. That is now performed by a small group of dominant men.
In 1924, he would say,
I have unwittingly ruined my country.
So control of the nation's money supply is the real power behind the throne.
Behind everything, dear Chloe. Behind everything. 1917. The Russian Revolution, the Wall Street crash of 1929, and the tightening of the money supply. 1948. And Archbishop William Temple wrote,
"The banks should be limited to only lend out the money deposited with them by their own clients."
1963. And President John F. Kennedy issues United States notes which carry a red seal.
You mean like Lincoln's greenbacks?
And what happened to both men? Then, in 1994, the Royal Act was brought in via the US Congress to legally replace Lincoln's greenbacks
with a debt-based monetary system.
Lincoln's notes had been in existence for 132 years.
The bankers will never let that happen again.
1964, and Captain Henry Kirby puts forth an early-day motion in the House of Commons.
A motion to restore the power of the issue of money to the Crown.
Ah, some hope for us all.
In a speech before the House, Kirby made the point that the banks created money out of nothing and were a danger to the balance of power.
Those that have the power to create such funds have total control over states, the press, and even individuals. The powers of Parliament are largely ephemeral.
1997, and Tony Blair enters Downing Street as the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. 4 days later, his Chancellor Gordon Brown gives the Bank of England full independence from political control.
But when will Parliament be independent of the Bank of England?
And austerity, as a result of the banking collapse of 2007-2008 and the tens of billions taken out of the British economy as a result.
If we leave Europe, house prices might come down. Okay, so the system is corrupt. You didn't need to show me the history of the world to tell me that.
The truth, Chloe, is not to know the system is corrupt. You can see that all around you. The trick, I'm afraid, is to learn to live in it and exploit it to your benefit. It's a big world, Chloe. This island is not the beginning or the end of it. If the future is not here, then look to where it might be. The international bankers are internationalists, so you be an internationalist. Find a part of the world where your money here is worth more over there. That's all the bankers do. It's a rigged game. Let's rig it to your benefit.
But how?
Now, let's turn that mobile phone thing of yours on, connect to the internet, and see where the cheap property is.
In The Money Secret, Jeff Bainham was Isaac and Annabelle Spinks-Jones was Chloe. Ian Sterling was Tom. Rory Hobson was Lucius. Jean-Luc Murphy was Julius Caesar. Dan Dawes was Flavius. John Fryer was Brutus. Hiral Vasani was the soothsayer. Nigel Peaver was King Henry VIII. Paul Whiting was Thomas Cromwell. Juliet Vaughan Turner was Queen Elizabeth I. Josh Lewis was King Charles I. Robin Ingram was William Patterson. Ben Lewis was President Andrew Jackson. Adam Boyle was President Lincoln. East Van Ondrusek was Tsar Alexander. And Adam Courting was Colonel Dick Taylor. All other parts were played by members of the cast. Artwork for the production was by Sheila Jackson. Music was composed and performed by Paul Whiting. And the play was written and directed by John Fryer. The Money Secret is an audio production for Political Art.